We know each other in the...
Who are we missing? Zach? 1, 2, 3. Zach's not coming. Yeah, he's not gonna be here.
How are you today? We missed you at the
Also,
ceremony.
Yes, try to get some diabetes monitors for my cat.
Melanie, do you know if Alsobrook is gonna zoom in?
Not Councillor Alsobrook, but Councillor Burkett was going to try and zoom in.
Okay.
So Councillor Alsobrook said he would try and be here in person. So
So are we all ready?
Councillor Burkett is not online yet, but I think we're ready to go.
Well, he's got it's sort of a business related thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Randy's coming.
And I knew exactly as it was coming out.
Okay,
If everyone could please take a seat, we're ready to begin.
John, Jim,
The mayor's, I'll take one of it.
let's call you guys to order now. So I want to call you to order. This is the work study. Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Here.
Councilor Woolman,
Here.
Councilor Miera,
Here.
Mayor's here. Okay, so turn your phones on to vibrate or turn them off, whatever, and then once you've done that, stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so tonight we're going to have a presentation from the ACE Center Group, formerly known as the Performing Arts Center. What I'd like is let them go ahead and make their presentations, and you guys write down any questions you have and who was making the presentation, and then at the end of it all, we can ask questions. Yes, Councilor Murray.
Mayor, I'd just like to request that maybe the ACE presentation not exceed 30 minutes and give us time to discuss other projects, because
Oh, yeah.
I think the problem with the last time was
We ran out of time.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so I believe they've set themselves up for about 5 minutes per presentation, correct? You got 5, so that's 25 minutes, and then we'd have perhaps we have an hour and a half here.
Yeah.
So I think we'll be okay. Okay, John, you're up.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
It's nice to see you guys again.
Nice to be seen.
Check your microphone.
Okay.
Sounds like it's on.
Okay. Good evening. It's nice to see you guys again. I'm John Schuman. I'm a Coralino, have been for 8 years. I've been chairman of the study committee you appointed in May of 22. And you appointed us to explore the possibilities of a Corrales Performing Arts Center. It's been my honor and privilege to lead our august group of committee members and advisors. I do have to admit, though, at times it seemed like I was pushing worms. But we all worked hard, got along well, and treated each other with respect. The result of our work will reflect our diligence and our commitment to the charge that you gave us. Before proceeding, there are a couple of things I need to do. Thank each of you for giving us the opportunity to serve our community. Thank those who came to our meetings and provided input. Mayor Fahey, Ron Curry, Lynn Sieverts, especially Councilman Woolman, thank you very much, and Melanie and Sky. Also a special shout out to Brian Kilcup, a facility build, and most especially to his architect, Mark Steinkamp. Mark has been very patient with our committee. As a matter of fact, he's been through 5 iterations of the drawing that you see before you, so he has been patient. Mark has always been responsive and very professional in the way that he's dealt with us. When he says he's going to do something on time, he does it on time and well. As each of my teammates presents, they're going to introduce themselves and cite the organizations that they represent. In my case, I represent the Corrales Cultural Arts Council, which you guys would better know as Music in Schools and Music in Corrales. In the audience are other team members, most of whom are familiar to you. Jim, Angela, Sandy, and not last but least, Tony. Although we know that you, village staff and village council, have heard parts of this presentation when we were with you last in September, we're going to go through them, not the same presentation, but iteration of the presentation, not only to refresh your memory, but to help those understand how we've gotten to where we are, especially those who weren't with us before and those who might be viewing this via Zoom. The presentation overview. Melanie?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, give me just 1 second. There we go.
Okay. The presentation overview, first, we've already talked about our committee task. We're going to talk to you a little bit about community membership. All new to you are going to be the committee recommendations made and what our plan of use is now. You've never seen the drawing that you have. I don't think you've seen a drawing from us before at all. Linda's going to talk a little bit about the public-private partnerships that are possible for raising money, especially. Jim's going to talk about the newly created Friends of the Corrales the Corrales Arts Community and Education Center, also known as ACE. It's a brand new organization we formed to help us going forward after our community dissolves in June of this year. And then I'll conclude the entire presentation. Our first order of business is to dissuade you from thinking that we're proposing a performing arts center. It's much more than that, benefiting our entire community and region. It will be a multifunctional, flexible facility. Therefore, we adopted a new name for the center, the Corrales Arts Community and Education Center, shortened ACE Center, to make it short and to making writing donation checks a whole lot easier. The center will be operated on the basis of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It will be the anchor of the Corrales Arts and Cultural District. Our process in determining the use and the design and determining whether or not a center is needed or appropriate was thorough and objective, receiving input from all major arts organizations in the village and elsewhere, and from the Parks and Recs, Main Street, Gore's Market, Adobe Theater, and local schools. As Ken will describe, we conducted surveys and interviews of 12 community and art centers in Colorado, New Mexico, and even Corsicana, Texas. Because the Adobe Theater would bring so much to the center and to our community and region, its treasurer, Barbara Boyd, has been a committee member. Our committee feels strongly that the Adobe Theater should find its new home in the ACE Center. The conceptual design is the result of many hours of discussion, some arguing but never fighting. And the draft, as I've said, is draft number 5 of what we've done. All the above has resulted in the multifunctional plan of use we're charged to develop and is being presented this evening. If it seems we're pressing, we are. The Adobe Theater's current lease expires in 3 years. And we're going to need to raise a lot of money, which takes a lot of time. Now, on to our committee recommendations. Ken, you're first.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ken Dukert. I'm a committee member, past president of the Corrales Society of Artists and a Corrales photographer. One of my first jobs as a committee member was to interview directors of 12 community art centers in Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas. While I found each center uniquely different, reflecting their community needs and resources, a view shared by all directors was the belief that the centers provided a focus for community spirit, and creative energy. All enjoyed a broad community support, and all believed the centers had high impact on residents, young and old. They all provided a wide range of activities and services and engaged a significant percentage of the community. One story provided some unexpected and valuable insight into the work of the centers. The director at the Durango Arts Center said she would like to change the name of the center to the Durango Education Center, because in the end, she said, while they hosted a wide variety of activities for preschoolers to seniors, the largest and most important group served were children. The task force has been mindful of this viewpoint and other experiences shared by the directors. Hearing about the success of these centers and wanting to achieve similar outcomes has provided a powerful incentive to each member of the committee. In considering the stories of these centers, along with our own views and experiences, we agreed early on to promote a versatile and flexible facility that would promote the widest range of activities. Furthermore, we agreed on an emphasis on equity, diversity, and inclusion in our planning process because it will maximize its use and position us to compete for grant and funding opportunities down the road. Now, imagine our center with a classic Southwest Mission design. Its interior is brightly lit with natural and directed gallery lighting. Artwork will dominate the walls and the interior space. The theater intermission area and art gallery will exhibit large wall art and sculpture and will feature changing exhibits of artwork by local and regional artists, and of course, including our children. The setting will be especially attractive for business and community celebratory receptions. A well-equipped catering kitchen close to the reception area will be available to user groups, and we'll have a courtyard with a stage that will be designed to host outdoor art and sculpture displays, classes, and activities such as outdoor concerts. Versatile interior rooms will be adapted for a variety of uses, including classes, workshops, board meetings, and additional gallery space. The walls, flooring, lighting, sinks, and separate doors will support broad usage. Movable folding walls separating these rooms will further expand the utility of the space by being able to create one large space from 3 smaller rooms. These rooms will be welcomed, more than welcomed, by the many community groups and organizations who now struggle to find adequate indoor space for meetings, activities, and workshops. Corrales is a regional hub for the arts and will soon be designated a New Mexico Arts and Cultural District. The regional nature of the Corrales art community can be illustrated very well by the Corrales Society of Artists, with its 145 members who live in Corrales, Placitas, Rio Rancho, Santa Fe, Las Lunas, and the greater Albuquerque area. It should be noted that Corrales has over 20 organizations, galleries, and businesses engaged in the art and cultural and educational activities. All give this project a standing ovation. Administrators at Corrales Elementary and Cottonwood schools are supportive and eager for us to meet with their parent organizations to introduce them to the project. And parents I've spoken with personally at school events and on the soccer fields have been enthusiastically supportive. It's easy for everyone to envision their direct involvement and use of the center. Through careful planning and keeping in mind successful models, this multi-use facility will provide long-term and immeasurable benefits to the village and surrounding communities. Many of us have our own stories about how the arts changed our and our children's lives. When John and I met with Liv Baca, principal at CES, she immediately shared how her daughter's life was changed in 5th grade as the result of a summer theater experience. That reaction is common. Music, theater, painting, and other creative expressions give us strength and purpose. The arts are essential to the quality of life and speak directly to our overarching goal of doing just that, enriching the quality of life of Coraleños, our immediate neighbors and communities in the entire Rio Grande region.
Good afternoon. Oh, I need this. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council members, village management, and guests. I'm Barbara Boyd, a resident of Corrales and the treasurer and business manager for the Adobe Theater. You may recall that the Adobe Theater started in Corrales in the old church in 1957, and the story is told that cast members climbed through the windows for scene changes. The Adobe Theater would like to come back to Corrales, bringing lighting and sound equipment, stage preparation materials such as saws and flats, props and furniture and costumes for a total value of about $100,000. Today, the Adobe Theater is limited to 99 seats due to space restrictions. Our committee is proposing a theater with flexibility to seat up to 220. And so to give you a comparison, the old church currently seats about 176. So you'll see the theater space is fan-shaped. You'll see that kind of hugs the stage. And the Adobe Theater loves that because our current layout is fan-shaped, and it provides an intimacy that other theaters don't have. And the team got to see that in action this summer to go and actually view a play. The large theater will allow the Adobe Theater to potentially offer productions for audiences of more than 99, but we will be able to kind of rope off 99 if we need to do that for licensing purposes. More importantly, the large theater will be able to accommodate other community events such as Music in Corrales, candidate forums, lectures, children's plays, and even movies. So you'll see a projection screen up there at the top, at kind of the back of the half circle of the stage. That would allow us to do movies and other things like that. The larger venue will attract bigger names and more regional interest with its resulting positive impact on the local economy. So imagine a stage schedule collectively planned by the Adobe Theater, Music in Corrales, teachers, and groups from Corrales and the surrounding communities. The main takeaway regarding this theater space is that our committee wants it to be flexible. And then if you bring it down just a little bit, go this way, down, the other way. Yep, sorry, there you go. So there you'll see an office. So that office will be used by the center's manager and for others who need it to walk in as needed. And that space will also have a ticket office, so you can see that. So we have in there dressing rooms for men and women. So if you go over this way, dressing rooms for men and women. We've got rehearsal space and green room space, and then set construction and storage spaces there as well. If you go to page 3 of this drawing, you'll see the slightly raised stage. So it'll just be about 6 inches high. So this will be a very intimate stage setting. So see, the stage is just a little bit higher than this first seat. So that is also to help provide some intimacy. And we will use storage space. We will put storage space underneath the seats. So that'll help us use the space effectively. All right, so now go back to the PowerPoint, please. And go, yeah, so I'll go back one slide. Yes, thank you. One item we need to consider is parking. We will need adequate parking for up to 300 center attendees, which we believe can be accommodated by providing a combination of full-size and compact car parking and using the Growers Market, Rec Center, and the Anderson property parking areas with lighted pathways to the center. And the next PowerPoint slide. We want the architecture to be mission style to reflect the artistic purpose of the center while maintaining the charm of Corrales. We will need signage at the corner of Double S Road and Corrales Road to help with people knowing where we are. All right.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, administrators, and other guests. I am Linda Parker and have been a part of several of the organizations that are already involved in this project. Currently, I'm the treasurer for Corrales Main Street. The success of completing this $8 million project is based upon a public-private partnership through the use of a well-thought-out development plan that establishes goals and assigns individuals to achieve the goals by a certain timeline. One of the tasks of the plan is to identify the capacity of potential donors based upon their past donations and identifying what their needs or funding missions are, and mail that data into a specific ask of a person, corporation, private foundation, or governmental entity. Since this committee appointed by you cannot solicit funds on behalf of the village, we are creating a 501c3, Friends of the Corrales Arts, Community, and Education Center. This committee and its advisors will form the board of directors for the new nonprofit, and we will solicit funds on behalf of the center. This nonprofit will be the other half of the public-private partnership. Potential donors are being identified currently, and our asks will range from, 7 digits to 2 to 3 digits, thereby allowing all sizes of donor budgets. Our intent is to solicit as many citizens as possible, which will include you all personally. I like to think a reality is if someone imagines that they will, at some time, use the center, then they need to be on the donor list. As an example, when I was working at the New Mexico Museum of Natural History as their director of development, one of the campaigns we ran was called Dimes for Dinosaurs. That was directed at school children who literally donated dimes. As explained in our last presentation to you, a public-private partnership is not new to the village. The most notable current one is between the village and Corrales Main Street. We currently have the ability, because of that agreement, to receive donations that are placed in restricted equity accounts within CMS. You've heard the word imagine several times tonight, and I'm going to use it again. So just imagine a few years down the road, you will be able to say, as part of your legacy to this village, I helped create this amazing center. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name's Jim Kruger. I'm representing Corrales Main Street and the Corrales Art Center in this project and endeavor, and I'm officially an advisor to the task force. I'm not quite sure what that means, but that's what I am. So, but In addition to all the things that have already been reported, and some of the things that I will report on here have already been mentioned, but the task force has been working away at forming this organization that has been referred to as and named Friends of Corrales ACE Center. And for me, it has already become known as Friends of ACE, since the other name for me is rather long and cumbersome, and as John mentioned, it's easier to write checks to Friends of ACE than to lay that all out. And as been pointed out, the acronym ACE stands for Arts, Community, and Education. And in this effort, we have already completed a conflict of interest policy and have raised some seed money for the effort of the work of Friends of ACE. We've raised over $5,000 in cash, and as Barbara mentioned a moment ago, we're including in the raising of funds, the contribution from the Adobe Theater for the lighting and sound equipment that is valued at over $100,000. So, as we move forward here, the Friends of ACE will be completing our bylaws, completing an application for a 501c3 status, completing a strategic plan focused on the first year of operation that will include goals, objectives, action plans, and timelines. In this process and in our efforts to form Friends of ACE, we have been supported by and worked with the Modrell Sperling Law Firm on a pro bono basis, which I think is significant and obviously helpful in the fundraising part of our whole effort. You may ask us, why all this activity right now? And I think the short and straightforward answer to that question is we want to be prepared that when it comes time to raise money and further promote this project, we're in a position to do that, and we don't want to be catching up, so to speak, in being in a position to do that kind of work. So thank you for your support in many ways, but in particular with this project.
You can see that we've been busy. We're delivering a concept plan of design for you this evening, as I've shared, that you've not seen before. No one outside this room has ever seen it before. It's the 5th iteration of the concept plan. And the first thing I'd like to remind you of is that this is a concept plan. Even if we decide that we're going to build on this plan, I can guarantee you that before this project is completed, change will occur. So view this as a concept plan, but a very good one that will give you an idea of what we're proposing. And it's on this that we would propose going forward. There were some minor modifications to this, and I'd be embarrassed to go back to Mark for the 6th time asking for a change, but if I have to do that, I'll do that. We believe we've completed the tasks that you've given us. We believe that we've actually exceeded the tasks that you've given us because we're well into the process of forming the Friends organization. And one thing that as Ken talked about the interview and reviews of the 12 different organizations in 3 states that do what we would propose the center will do, they are all operated by not-for-profit organizations. In one case, the city of Durango, the not-for-profit actually owns the facility. But in all other instances, the village or the municipality, whatever, owns the facility, but it is operated by a not-for-profit. That's what the Friends would be. And there, as Linda has described, various public-private partnerships in the area, there is a close example of what we would do for the center as a Friends organization. And that's the relationship between the Corrales Historic Society and Old Church. The Corrales Historic Society basically operates Old Church on behalf of the city or for the village. Because of the complexity of the center, our organization, the Friends organization, would do a whole lot more than what the Historic Society does, but that'll give you a good idea of an example already existing in our village. What's necessary in the short term, a little bit of money. We are asking that the village seek $65,000 for a virtual tour of the center. In a previous life, I used to build or have built models of regional malls that we would take to bodies just like this in municipalities seeking public financing or the rights to do this or rights to do that. In this modern day and age, even though you could probably use different techniques than we did way back when, we're proposing a virtual tour, which is more, it's easier to carry around to meetings, and it would be critical to us in raising money for the village and explaining how things would work within the center. Again, I say that is critical. The second is that we're seeking that the village ask for $60,000, and that's for to develop the first detailed architectural drawing for the center. It would probably also include a site plan that we would need to facilitate any changes that we might need or variance that we might need for parking, connecting the Anderson property, the Growers Market, and maybe the rec center to the facility so that we have more than adequate parking for the facility. So the big question is, where's the bucks? The big bucks. We're not going to do this by ourselves. We need your help as well, and the helps of our state representatives, our state senators. We need help on a federal level. We need help on a semi-private basis, like from the NEA, et cetera, et cetera. When does all this activity begin? If you approve an ACE center, and if you approve this plan and design, it will begin with the first objective manifestation of the demolition of the Jones property buildings and the abatement of the environmental issues existing on that property. And our best guesstimate right now is that will probably come sometime in March, maybe April, maybe as late as May. The longer we go, the shorter time we have to react to this termination of lease on behalf of the Adobe Theater. We are operating under time pressures, and if it seems like we're pressing, we are. And I apologize to my teammates for always pressing the issue, but that's my job. And so we're presenting to you a plan of use that's 5 months ahead of schedule, but we've also incorporated into the plan of use a suggestion on how it is that we can legally proceed in raising money. So from the bottom of our hearts, we really appreciate the opportunity you've given us. And if you have questions, if you'd like to enter a discussion, that's why we're here.
Councilman Woolman.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, Barbara, I was wondering, this time frame is pretty compressed. If you're talking 3 years or 2 years, 9 months, I'm not sure exactly where we are. With the amount of money that needs to be raised, with the Jones property abatement and what may come down the line, do you think there's any flexibility in the lease situation at this point?
You and the mayor are on the right page, the same page, actually. So he asked that question the other day. We have a really good relationship with our landlord. I think it's possible to extend it. Our dilemma is that we currently rent the theater and the casa behind it, to the west of it, and that's about 1,500 square feet of he wants to take that casa back in the 3 years. That's 1,500 square feet of real estate that we'd have to figure out a way to take care of. That covers our rehearsal space. It covers all of our storage, so all of our props and our saws and flats and everything are in that casa and its garage. So I think that would be our dilemma, is what would we do then? And what would we do? How would we store all the things that we have?
Oh, excuse me, Mel.
Thank you. What a great presentation. I also wanted to ask Barbara, do you have current donors that would back a move to Corrales, do you think?
One of the things we're going to do is start analyzing zip codes of our donors and zip codes of our ticket holders. So I would tell you that we don't know because we haven't really gone to our donors base yet to talk about this. We wanted to kind of get through this step before we started talking about it with our donors and with our ticket holders. So we haven't done that yet. But we did want to start analyzing where are our ticket holders coming from and where are our donors located. So we are going to do that analysis.
And do you have like a fundraiser every year to help support the Adobe Theater?
We have constant fundraising because theaters, just so you know, theaters do not live on ticket sales alone, not even close. About 40% of our income is generated by donations. So we are constantly raising money and constantly asking, and we encourage our ticket buyers to donate as well. We did just have a fundraiser on New Year's Eve. That was actually the first time we had ever done that. We had held a cabaret and charged a lot of money per ticket. I wasn't sure how many patrons would come, but we had 80 people come, and we were charging $50 a head. And so that was quite a nice chunk of income, and we had a silent auction. And so we probably netted about $7,000 out of that one specific event. I think we'll do more of them since it was so successful.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
Councilman Murray?
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Yes, thank you for the presentation. So I'm going to ask the elephant in the room question. What do you think it's going to cost? Because the first iteration more or less showed a basic concept, but this was a lot more elaborate than that. So what do you estimate it to cost, and what do you think the nonprofit is going to contribute to this?
That is the elephant in the room. To be candid with you, our best guesstimate in today's dollars is that the facility would cost about $3, maybe $350 per square foot, based upon state numbers going forward to the year 2024. This property will cost someplace around $750 to $800 a square foot. $500 to $550 per square foot. So that gets us in the vicinity of $8 million as a total cost.
Yes, sir. Councilman Woolman?
Thank you, Mayor. I like the idea of a regional approach. How do you see this playing out in terms of fundraising? Whether you're talking about the Albuquerque community, one of the problems we have, of course, we don't have any corporate headquarters in Albuquerque or even in New Mexico. So given the banking background, I mean, there are a lot of banks that have, various community commitments. Do you see this as an approach that you'll take and say this is going to be a regional theater so you can bring in as many dollars as you can from large corporate donors? I know you mentioned you have interest in artists, Santa Fe to Los Lunas and all in between. So you'll be approaching the Santa Fe community as well as others?
Yeah, absolutely, particularly Albuquerque. Large businesses there. We have developed a pretty comprehensive list of large businesses from whom we would solicit the seven-figure donations that Linda has mentioned. And it's a list of, I'd say, 10 or more organizations and institutions. That's as far as I'm going to drift into that. Linda is the pro, and I'm going to ask her to expand on that.
Well, let me get my crystal ball out and see if I can answer your question. As I referenced in my presentation, we have to create a development plan, and then we identified the donors, potential donors. And just like this evening, before we even started, an individual came up and said, well, gee, have you thought about Bueno Foods? And I said, oh, absolutely. Gene and Jackie live in Corrales, as everybody knows. There's also some high-income movie people, production in the village that something like this would be a prime thing. We also want to look at Netflix. We have not ventured into that part. We have to build this part first, and then we'll do the rest of it. But it's, lots of people are not real enthusiastic about asking people for money. They feel like they're begging or whatever. And it's just a sales job. You have a passion about something, and you ask somebody to buy into your passion. When we think about children being our future caregivers, I sure want those kids to have the best education possible. So we have lots of different sources to approach, and when we have a better plan devised, then we'll come back and explain it to you if you all want. But something that even our group has not talked about, but has been in the back of my mind, that after we get the money raised, then we should start an endowment to help maintain it down the road. And planned giving is a part of endowment creation. So I know when my husband died almost 4 years ago, his memorial fund at the Albuquerque Community Foundation was really well received by people donating money to it. And it was that endowment will go to benefit the Parker Center for Family Business. It's just it just feeds upon itself.
So let me throw a little bit here. They have been limited on the advice of counsel on this whole concept of a nonprofit and fundraising. They've been focusing on actually coming up with a plan, a design, a concept for us to evaluate and to move forward with. And at that point in time, then the focus can be on the private entity that raises the money as opposed to the village entity that comes up with a plan. So we had to maintain an arm's length relationship to avoid any kind of, this potential conflict. Yes, sir.
Well, Mayor, how do you look at the operation of this facility then, in terms of maintenance, leasing? Does the Adobe Theater get priority for their events over somebody else? I mean, there are a lot of unanswered questions about the operation of the facility itself that I might have.
That's correct. This is the first step.
Okay.
We have to move forward once we sort of have an idea of what we are going to build. We have a plan. And then we can move forward on the idea of funding it and how we do the business relationship. We have told the Adobe Theater organization that they're going to probably need, well, they will have to have their own agreement with the, we're going to call it ACE Theater, ACE Center. Friends of ACE, because that's best for them and how this system works. But we had to start somewhere, and we were limited by advice of counsel to how we did this step that they're sort of drifting into, and they've been drifting into the whole time, because they're just like you are. They want to know, well, how are we going to pay for all this stuff? And just like me. But we have to sort of keep it separate. And once we have this idea and this plan, then we can move forward very aggressively to getting the funding, to planning the funding, to developing the contracts with the individuals and organizations that will use the facility, if that's necessary. It will be necessary for the Adobe Theater to protect them and their investment. But they don't have an answer for a lot of those types of questions at this point, because they've sort of been told, don't do that just yet.
Okay, let's get back to the other two questions that they were wanting to know. The $65,000 for the 3D model, where is that going to live? Is that going to be on a village server somewhere? Or is that going to be just strictly for their use?
That's a wish right now.
Well, I know it's a wish, but I mean, it's.
There hasn't been there is a plan to move forward, and we will probably, we've asked for some funds to develop a design of this facility from the legislature,
Okay,
okay?
including the 60,000 for the architectural drawings.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that's enough, but, you know, we've asked for what, 119 or 199, something. We've got it on the ICIP.
Okay,
We requested 115,000. That was the first quote.
115,
That was
okay.
the quote I had originally gotten from the committee before we had to submit the paperwork, so.
Okay,
It's not quite the 125 that they're asking for, but
right. So that was basically an estimate, and these are probably firmer numbers. Anyone else? Councilor Miera?
no, sir.
Do we have anybody online? Councilors? Is Alsabrook there or Burkett?
Counselor Burkett might be the call-in participant. He said if he had questions, he would send me a text because he wouldn't have the ability to
Okay.
text in. So Counselor Alsobrook, if you are on, you can send me a text and I will read your question to the
Okay.
room.
I'm sure I didn't give you the answer you wanted to hear. It's because I don't have the answer you wanted to hear.
Ongoing discussions that we need to have about that at some point, you know, another work study, and we.
Oh, absolutely. This is, you know, we started this when, May, June? And we had initially thought about a year. I think this committee, this group has just done a fantastic job. I think you should be lauded for what you've done. And I've done nothing but step on the brake for these guys. You know, I was concerned that a lot of this was moving a little, and that, I think John's comment about, you know, moving fast was directed toward me because I was kind of concerned that we were moving a little too fast and drifting into the finances and the nonprofits, which are private, remember, as opposed to public, municipal related. And I didn't want there to be a conflict, and the attorney reminded me frequently of this.
To answer your question a little bit more, there are business models that we can use from the arts organizations that we've surveyed, and they're happy to make we can pull 990s on them and figure out exactly how they're working, but they've been more than gracious to us, especially to Ken, in telling us that if we need more information, operational information, things like that, they're happy to provide it. Another thing, so that you know, we do listen to Village Council, and as we proceed with the development of the Friends Organization is now meeting completely separately from the active committee that you guys set up about 8 months ago. And in so doing, we're not just meeting separately, we're meeting on separate days.
Good.
So for the first 9 months, we've been meeting every single Monday for at least an hour, sometimes an hour and a half or 2 hours. So what we're doing now is that we're alternating Mondays. One day it's your committee, and the next Monday it's the Friends Organization. We expect that sometime in the not too distant future, the Friends Organization will really replace the committee, because it can do everything that the committee is doing right now, plus some, and that's raising money.
Very good. Yes, sir. Oh, yes, ma'am. Did you want to make another comment?
Just a short one. I have personal experience with a public-private partnership. When I was the Director of Development at the Natural History Museum, I was an executive on loan to the museum. I was housed in the museum staffing itself, but the foundation paid my salary. And the foundation was on the 3rd floor of the museum. So they do work. I think they work very well. It's like any relationship. If you don't work at it, it kind of gets messy. But if we know what speed bumps to look out for, I think we can do this. And I think the other thing is that this group, several of us have owned businesses in Corrales, and we want to see our village become what so many people envision it can become. So I'm very excited about this.
Do you have another question? Yeah.
Well, no, I just want to make a comment that, thank you for coming, but we need to move on. It's been almost an hour now since we've, and I hate to do that, but we got other things we should be talking about as well. I'm sorry, counselors, but
Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome, and for each of you, I have my personal card with my contact information, my cell phone number, my email. I'll give each of you one of my cards. So if in the middle of the night you wake up thinking about this, wait till 5 tomorrow morning to call me.
Especially with fundraising ideas, right?
Well, thank you.
I just want to say, guys, I think I've already got a card. You don't have to give it to him. I think you did a very good job. Very professional.
I will be calling you.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
That is good.
Thank you.
thank you very much. You bet.
So Councilor Murray, fire away.
Well, so one of my ideas that I've had, there's a couple of them. One with the ICIP, I'd like to see a little bit more detail, maybe subsections on these big ticket items. If we are saying 1.8 million to the village for village center, maybe we need to start detailing about how much it costs for the paving, how much it costs for the lighting. I'd like to see a little bit more detail in that ICIP, rather than just a big figure. It says village center annex improvements or something like that. Also, down at the south end of the village, there is a property that's been sitting fallow for about 30-some years where the La Esperanza used to have their furniture sales. That property, I think, would be ideal for a substation or expand the parking for the Bosque or something like that. Just one of those things that we can put it on our wish list, maybe future purchases or something like that. I don't even know if the family wants to part with that piece of property or not, but it's on the curve as you come into the village on the east side. And so it's just, I think it's one of those things that, I think that even Chief Martinez is looking for a substation at the south end of the village. Might be a good place for it. I don't know.
That's the one that had, for a long time, had an Esperanza sign there.
Yes, exactly. But again, I don't know if it exists, if we want to sell or not. In terms of the Gonzalez property, are we any closer to getting that completed?
I'm sorry, what?
The Gonzalez property across, are we anywhere near that?
Address that?
I'll give a more detailed report, but right now there is no movement.
Okay,
It is stalled.
okay.
Yeah, he was going to talk about that in the
Okay.
administrator's meeting.
The one thing I didn't see in the packet was maybe on the library report, I didn't see an update on the annex.
There is no update on the annex.
Okay. Why not? We should be pushing to have that done, regardless of what we do with the Gonzalez property. We ought to have that moving forward.
So there is a plan, but there has not been movement because there's not a good, let's just say there's not a good idea where to stick it. And if we have a plan of where we want to put it, we're going to have to submit a site development plan for it because it's a big change in the park and the area of the library. And we've actually sort of delayed that because we want to expand out into the Gonzalez property when it's purchased and use that perhaps for some of this, perhaps even for the annex, putting it in a better location.
I worry that we're putting this off and it's going to get put off and the cost of the annex itself is going to go up.
I don't think you'd have to worry about that. I think the people at the library are paying attention and are interested and want to move forward, but they just want to do it so it doesn't impact the band shell and it doesn't impact the parking areas and it doesn't cause any problems for the existing library. I mean, I don't have a personal knowledge of what every one of them thinks, but that would certainly make sense. But no, it hasn't moved much. We have a plan, a conceptual plan.
So what was the problem with the existing plan that we saw where right next to the bandstand where they kind of have massaged that a little bit? Did they give up on that or
I'm not aware that any of that has been done.
Counselor, after the process was made clear to the folks that were developing it, they have not come back to the Parks and Rec Commission or even said they're ready to come back to the Parks and Rec Commission with something else.
Okay.
Counselor Wallman?
Yes, as a follow-up, Ron, do you know, or Mayor, do you know if the money that was privately raised is locked in? In other words, that was going to fund half of the annex, virtually. Is that locked in, do we know? Or is there a time frame?
I'll have to check and
Okay.
see.
Okay.
Because the sad problem with that whole plan is they got the cart way in front of the horse in this. And that was part of the problem, because when they first started talking about it, they were talking about a small building. And then before there was any discussion with the administration or with the Parks and Rec Commission, it had blossomed into something else. And they were having space requirements, and they're gonna have parking lot, take out 2 or 3 parking spots. And they were making some assumptions that the Gonzalez property would be available for a pathway through the back, behind the band shell, et cetera, et cetera. And so it just kind of, and so now they've, as I understand it, they've been silent and gone back to the drawing board so that they get into a situation where they have a better process.
Mel, did you have something you wanted to? Okay. Yes, sir, Bill.
Mayor, I raised it several times before. Several members of the council and Public Works, Parks and Rec met at the end of June about Salsey Park. We still have no definitive response as to whether or not, what the legal status is of that and what plans might go forward.
You want to talk about that in the administrator's building?
Or I can talk about it now.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We are still having a conversation with our attorney, and that conversation includes what we are able to do with that property and what we're able not to do with that property. And so I anticipate that discussion will take place probably, hopefully in the next week.
Okay.
And then once that I've got a feeling of where we are legally, then we'll broadcast it, because what I don't want to do, and what Randy doesn't want us, the village to do, is broadcast something
Sure.
that is ambiguous and we can't defend or define what we're talking about.
I had one other thing, if I could.
Yes, sir.
At the end of August, the village received money from the state for paving of Upper Sagebrush. And I know I talked with Michael
What?
Chavez.
I didn't hear you.
The upper part of Sagebrush, the repaving
Oh, okay.
of that. I think we received $1 million from the state. And I talked with Michael Chavez probably about 3 months ago, and he said they were in the design phase, et cetera. I was wondering if there's any update on that?
I think Michael's on the Zoom.
Yes, I'm here. Design actually just started.
Mike, we can't hear you.
Very far along with it.
I think you're muted. Or no, you're not muted, but we can't hear you.
Oh,
Are you still there?
I'm here, but,
Oh, now we can hear you. Awesome. Okay.
okay, you can hear me now?
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah, the design, that when we started design was just real preliminary, because we had to start spending the money within a 30-day time period. So we're just barely getting started on it. I don't even think we have any property corners staked or anything yet.
So you're still in a design phase?
Oh, yeah, it's going to be a while. This is a pretty big project.
Okay, how long do you have that money, did you say?
We have it for like 3 years,
Okay,
but we have to start spending it within 30 days.
Okay,
So what I did is we actually took a drive-through there, did like a preliminary inspection, just so we could actually have a bill from Steve Groman, just to cover our butts with this.
okay. When you start work on this, after the design is finished, what is the anticipated finish?
Something like that, I think we could have it done within 3 months.
When?
Within 3 months, once we get started.
Okay, and you'll start ballpark, you think, when?
I would hope to start within a year. It kind of depends. The hardest part's going to be up on that far west end, trying to make that safe and keep the road width. But that's up to the design engineer.
Okay,
Thank you. Yeah.
so it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking probably about a year, and then maybe we can break ground on it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I don't know, counselors, do you have other questions before I get started on? So, one of the things I think that Counselor Kate, or Representative Cates thought about was maybe the village needs a dedicated fund or a dedicated grant writer and fund, somebody to go out and find all these dadgum funds for us. If we're interested in spending the other guy's money, I think we're missing out on an opportunity because we didn't get involved in the infrastructure money because we didn't have anything ready to go. But I think it seems to me that maybe we should hire somebody full-time to be a grant writer or go out and look for these funds that are available either through federal or state, whatever. I appreciate that if we could use somebody from SCAFCA, but I don't want to tax them any more than they're already being used. I think we just need to hire somebody. Tanya, I think, is overstretched between being a medical facilitator, doing the vaccines, and she's doing the grant writing for the fire department and so forth. I think we need somebody else to maybe go out and look at this village-wide for all these projects that we want to do. And if we can't get the state to do something for us, then we ought to be seeking funds either through other entities so that we can maybe take advantage of some of these. I don't know, what we call the Marty Chavez Slush Fund, is there any, I mean, they basically said, apply more or less, I guess, but we probably ought to have somebody on board doing that for us and just let them focus on that strictly.
Okay, you have any comment?
Unless you want to.
No, I don't have any comment. I remember talking to Marty Chavez, and basically all the money was funneled through the organizations that presently exist, through the programs that presently exist, and so you had to apply the same way you normally do. And part of the problem with that is, as you may recall, we were labeled as an affluent community, and so that took us out of a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
So, I hate to, so let me ask a question, Larry. Do you have a comment about the issue of the Marty Chavez Slush Fund? Or can you, maybe you could just enlighten us as to, what we're missing out on because of this, the way we're approaching trying to get funds.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Larry Horan, a new lobbyist for Village of Corrales. It's a pleasure to be here before you. I don't think I'll comment on the slush fund. But what I will say, I'll comment a little bit about how that money was spent. A lot of the money that was available that former Mayor Chavez was working with at the state level was some of those ARPA federal funds that they weren't sure if the governor had authority to spend or the legislature had authority to spend. So when it all was shook out in the last session, essentially what happened is the Supreme Court said, no, legislature gets to spend it, and so that's what they did. So you had an application process that people went through that ultimately did not result in any different kind or extra funding. Are you missing out on funding opportunities? Maybe, but what you don't want to do is rely just on state funds. The most successful funding applications use a variety of funds. So if you have the ability to apply for funds through like the Water Trust Board, If you have village funds, you use state capital outlay funding or other available funding, which we have some of now, and you also tap into federal funding.
Right.
FEMA, Army Corps of Engineers, Department of Health, whichever fund source is available. That's the best way to cobble together a project. The biggest pot of money, of course, as some of you have very good experience with, is the federal pot of money. The second biggest pot is the governor's pot of capital outlay funding. But those grant opportunities, and a lot of times the federal funds are the ones you really want to explore because sometimes they're left on the table that people don't know about them. So you really want to hit all of those aspects to obtain funding rather than relying on one or a couple of those. And especially for legislators, what they really like to hear is if you give us really the dollar amount, it's not irrelevant, but it is less significant if you follow it up with, if you give us $1.2 million, it will complete and be the final funding piece. And so that's what we try to get to as we identify projects to apply for funding at the legislative level.
Yes, sir.
So, like when they presented tonight for the ACE facility, it seems to me that there are cultural funds available at the federal level that maybe we could tap into to help fund this, other than local donors within the city or the village. So it seems like to me we're missing out on some opportunities through, like you say, the various organizations, like the highway department. I get emails from them all the time, say they got money available for all these projects, or they got money available. All we need to do, would we need to apply for those type of things? I know we have to go through DOT and get their blessing and so forth and so on, but it seems like to me we're just missing out on funding opportunities that would help us get down the road with these projects that we want to fund.
Yes.
Mayor, Larry.
No, Mel was first.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry.
So I guess I'm a little confused about the funding because it sounded like the ACE, the Friends of the ACE committee need to do their funding outside of the village's auspices. So can we maybe figure out, now is that true? Did I hear that right?
So they are not to be raising money yet because they're going to form a 501c3, and that's a private entity.
Right.
Okay?
So can we still, as a village, give them money for that? Or are we separated from that because it's a 50c3?
We can't give them money, but we can take a plan and we can raise money for a design. And then when we have a design and architectural plans, we can go to the individuals or groups or organizations that have the money and say, hey, we have this plan. Do you have $8 million? And then when they give you the money, you can spend it as soon as it's available. But, that's what works the best if you can do it that way. And that's why many times in a lot of these things, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but you have to have money to get money.
Right.
And that's why I remember when we first started talking about all the money we have in this fund we're trying to protect. It's nice to have that cash available should we need it, because you can also get funds like, you can get legislative funds to help with planning and design, but usually we ask for planning, design, and construction. But, those, for example, we have the Water Trust Board. No, we have the Clean Water State Revolving Fund that we went ahead and requested a loan, and they gave it to us. But part of that deal was they gave us $75,000 for fire suppression, $75,000 for the sewer, and that was to do the initial PER, basically. And then they gave us $500,000 for fire suppression and $1.5 million for the sewer line. These are grants now. This is not a loan. And this is to do the design. And at that point, if we want to borrow money, we can. If we don't want to borrow money and we happen to get FEMA to come in at that point, say, hey, we can give you $1 million, and we have the plan, by the way, then that works real well. I mean, that's been successful in the past. And Larry, that's sort of what Larry was talking about to some degree just now. And that's what we're trying to do.
Well, I guess like I said, I wouldn't want to do anything that would hamper the Friends of the ACE because it's a 501c3 versus what the village is doing with grants and stuff.
We're not going to hamper them.
No, that's what I'm wondering. Like, what's the division? What's the mark that we don't cross over when we're, planning and getting money and getting grants and getting loans or whatever? I just wanted to make sure I was understanding how that worked.
We don't give them money.
Right.
Nor
Because, yeah.
can we incur any future funds from them at any point in time.
Until they are a 501c3 and they can donate it to us, they can give it to us.
The books wouldn't look right and say, well, they're going to be giving us some money when
Right.
they get
I'm
it.
just saying, after they become a 501c3.
Yes, then it can work. But there are a lot of steps in the way. Remember, we still have a building there.
Right.
And we believe that's sort of a hindrance to getting a lot of interest. And so we want to, and we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to need, as Stuart pointed out, a site development plan. And as I think as mentioned by someone else, we want to pull the two properties, the Anderson property and the rec center property together, because there's, I have a concern that perhaps someone could raise the issue of off-site parking, for example, which is, it's been, concerns have been raised in our ordinances about people with off-site parking. But, those are kind of the things that we're working through.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, you were next.
Just a couple of thoughts. One, Larry, you're very familiar with the federal delegation office. So if a project can write up a description of what they want, you submit that to the federal delegation office, which represents all 5 congressional offices. And there's a specific person assigned to look throughout all the federal departments and agencies for funds that could fund that project. It has to be pretty tight. We tried it with the pedestrian access route, and we were somewhat successful, and then the state shut us down on that. But I mean, that's a way to go. The other thing is, and I'm not sure the new name, I think it's called Project something, but it used to be called the Grant Plant. It's an organization that Terry Bruner, who was head of USDA Rural Development for the state for many, many years, was head of, provides grant writers on contract to communities. You don't have to hire someone on a full-time basis for that, but they are professional grant writers that can assess the needs and then look for funds that way. So there's something to look into.
Yes, Councilor Miera.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I was just going to say the manner in which we're going about taking care of the land where we're going to be putting ACE is more than appropriate, because, in the legislative perspective and otherwise, other places, it's better that even the cleaning up of that property, we took responsibility for that. That's not in the bill saying that that's what it's going to cost to make ACE. That's out. And I say that only because of the amounts of money that I had put in at the board that we gave to the city of Albuquerque when we did the rail yards. They wanted it clean, and we put up money, but they couldn't take the money because it wasn't clean yet. They put money next year, took it back. I had to redo that money over, did like 3 times, because you had to clean first, and that was our responsibility, city of Albuquerque. So we're doing that now by doing that here, so that is not part of the bill for ACE. And that really makes it clean for those 501c3s to give us the money, because they're not paying for cleanup. They want to pay for building, and that's what we're going to be doing.
Yes, sir. That's sort of the plan.
I hope that is, yes. I got a thumbs up from Ron on that
Do you
one.
have anything else to add, you think? Hey, thank you very much for your comments. Does anybody want to ask Larry a question before you?
Larry, real quick, if I may, Mr. Mayor, just for those of us who have been around, we always hear about it, but year to year it's different. There's the third, and there's a third and a third. And the governor gets a third, and the Senate gets a third, and the House gets a third. At one time during the administration of Bill Richardson, that was always fun. Remember that when we got a third, he got a third of a third. And so therefore we landed up getting the 6th. Ron's laughing about that one.
I knew where that was going.
I only
I
said
think
that.
Ron was partially responsible.
I only say that because we're lucky to have the representative here with us tonight. But as we go down that third, and the third, this year, I don't believe that the governor's going to take, like the former governor said, well, then I get a third of the third. And so we went down. Just real quickly, we're looking at about how much in capital outlay in general?
So, Mayor and Councilor Miera, In August, they were anticipating $1 billion. Their latest revenue estimates in December for general fund revenue was an additional $1 billion from August. So we don't know yet. So the last number we've heard was $1 billion. But as you know, that can change. It can go up, it could go down. That's only about $200 million more than they did last year, and we have significant more dollars available. But a couple of things that they're going to be doing, and the governor released an idea for about $150 million in water projects. There's talk through the municipal league for a big airport bill. So as you know, when they have this much money, you'll probably see a big road bill, you'll see a big water bill, an airport bill. The other thing they may do is, instead of bonding for a capital outlay, they may use general fund cash. But the last number we heard was $1 billion, but that could go up or down. And that does not include the House Bill 2 junior money, which I know you're familiar with, but what that is excess general fund that they put into a separate bill for legislators. What they did last year is they allowed for half of that money to go for capital projects and half to go for operational program costs. And what they did is allocated a dollar amount per legislator to spend. Last year was $600,000 for a Senate member, $300 for operational, $300 for capital, and it was $300 for a House member. We anticipate they'll have another junior bill. The rules on junior are just, well, they're squirrely, they change, and they're not as rigid, but there's also going to be a junior spending bill. So there's going to be, you know, they have over $3.5 billion in new recurring revenue that they're going to try and spend without busting the budget. The governor's budget recommendation came out today. Her budget growth was only about 11%. I say only 11%. That's a significant budget growth, but considering out of about just over an $8.7, $8.8 billion budget, you have $3.5 billion in new revenue coming, which is, so only an 11% increase is very small. So there's going to be a lot of money. We just don't know how they're going to spend it. And what I'm worried about, just from expectation standpoint, is what they did to us, meaning communities last year, is they said, shoot for the moon, give us big projects, you know, these projects that are going to change the scope of New Mexico, and then they funded exactly none of them. They just funded capital outlay in the traditional way. So we just have to be cognizant we don't know what they're going to do.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing them to spend some time with us, but I think that things do change. But I think what's going to be always the changeable is that January 26th, we're going to get that new funding, and so it's just a couple of weeks away, but nonetheless, it's going to make a huge difference.
And the trend has been up. Last session, they purposely did not have another revenue estimate presentation because they didn't want to increase the pie too much for members as their expectations, because it was right when the budget was crossing over from the House to the Senate.
So that being said, that junior money, everybody likes it. It's cash, and it's very nice. The other one isn't, and the fact is, when you get the bond money, people realize they think it's cash dollars, but you got to sell the bonds, and then the bonds don't get sold. As Ron would know that better than anybody. Bonds don't get sold until after July. That money's not available until a little bit later, but they expect you to spend it within that year and a half period. That's where everything that we just talked about really makes sense about getting down to the budget area of how much money we actually have available to us right after we come back from the legislative session. 2 pots of money. It's going to be up to the legislator to share with us tonight. We can help her out, and vice versa. She's going to help us out with those monies. But I think the most important part is that money is really flexible once it gets strictly into capital outlay money, because most of that's bonds. And you don't see that money right away as much as you do the cash dollars that are available to them.
And Mayor and Councilor, if I may, just one more thing, and not to sound in these boom times to not be a pessimist, but the problem when you use capital outlay general fund money, that money when you hit the inevitable downturn is easy to sweep. So in 2020, the COVID session, the governor in her capital outlay portion, her third, used almost exclusively general fund revenue. I remember specifically, the governor has 20 days from the end of the session to sign the bill. On the 18th day, COVID hit. And the governor line item vetoed every general fund capital outlay appropriation because she knew we were going to need the revenue. And what happened in 2009 when you were there,
I was there.
all of those general fund revenues were
Ron was
swept.
there.
So I just say that they're going to be available, but it's always imperative, once you get the funding, you spend it as quickly as possible, because if they come into a crisis, meaning the legislature, they will find a way to sweep it.
Yeah.
Yes, Councilor Murray.
This is a comment. On Star Trek, there's a rules of engagement for the Ferengi. And they say, once we have your money, we never give it back. So I think that's a good rule that we, if we get it, let's spend it. So-
You need to be ready to spend it.
Mayor, Councilor Murray, if you encumber it, it is pretty safe.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay, anything else? All right, well, let's take a break, and we'll start the regular meeting in about, what is that, 7 minutes or so?
Yeah.